back to our channel where we provide updates and undisclosed narratives on the royal family. We provide you with the exciting news. 5 minutes ago, staff snubbed Camilla, while supporting Catherine revealing a shocking truth. In an organization that has long been known for its strict rules, elaborate ceremonies, and outward appearance of unity, a series of recent insider stories paint Buckingham Palace as the site of a shocking and unsettling internal break. These claims, which originate from a variety of palace sources and those who say they saw it happen, say that the royal household is going through a long and strange crisis of allegiance. Two of the most important women in the monarchy are at the core of the purported disagreement: Queen Camilla, who is Queen Consort, and Catherine, the Princess of Wales. The story that comes from these claims is about a series of events that started with private tensions and ended with staff behavior that was clearly coordinated. Some people have called this a silent rebellion. In this story, the rebellion is not a march or a formal declaration, but rather an organized collective withdrawal of customary deference and service toward the Queen Consort. This was done out of loyalty to the Princess of Wales and a belief among some palace employees that she has been mistreated. It is essential to underscore from the beginning that the depiction provided above is based on a synthesis of testimony evidence from individuals characterized as being closely affiliated with the royal household. These individuals say that what happened was more than just a violation of etiquette. They say that it shows a deep divide in the way the monarchy works. Their evidence says that the issue started with the manner the Queen treated the princess, which they claim hurt Catherine severely and made staff members who had come to care for her want to protect her. The reports say that even though the palace has always seemed like a peaceful place to the public, there have been serious fights behind the scenes that make people wonder how loyalty is shared and protected inside the House of Windsor. The following recounting combines those accounts while keeping their main points in the way they were told, and it tries to put them in the institutional and emotional framework that makes such a break both conceivable and so important. To understand why palace personnel may have felt they had to behave in the manner described, insiders say it is important to know how the two senior ladies have apparently treated their subordinates in very different ways. At the royal household, there are strict roles and formal procedures that shape everyday life. Every duty, from ceremonial obligations to cleaning private rooms, is done under a set of rules that stress privacy and constant competence. People say that the Princess of Wales stood out in that environment by treating her personnel in a very personal and caring way. Instead of limiting her interactions to formal lessons or public acts of kindness, the princess's reportedly habitual actions, like remembering names, asking about family members, and taking care of small private needs, have, according to the reports, created strong, widespread goodwill among workers at all levels. The stories that have been shared among palace workers in private chats show this point. People in these circles frequently tell the tale of a junior maid who became sick. They say that the princess secretly arranged for soup from the royal chefs to be sent to the maid's room. A similar story tells how the princess sent flowers and a handwritten card expressing her personal concern and well wishes when she heard that a footman's kid had been sent to the hospital. These kinds of gestures are significant because they are simple, human, and not very impressive. In a culture where procedure might come before personal connection, they show that the organization is focused on relational care instead of just managing people. People who know how life in the palace works know that these kinds of rituals of attention are not inconsequential. A lot of individuals work for the royal household, but you can only see their work when they make public appearances: cleaners, kitchen porters, valets, footmen, and other administrative workers. For these workers, who frequently operate behind closed doors and are at danger of being regarded like interchangeable pieces of a bigger machine, being recognized as people is a valuable kind of acknowledgement. Staff members who were mentioned in private reports have made it clear that the princess sees us as people, not just uniforms. This is an effort to show the distinction between procedural respect and moral personal regard. According to this story, the princess's modest acts of kindness did more than make people grateful. They formed a lasting tie of love and devotion that went beyond what was expected of them as employees. In these reports, on the other hand, Queen Camilla's conduct is depicted in quite different terms. People who talk about how she interacts with her personnel usually say that she is more formal, more aloof, and more hierarchical. While the princess's behavior makes her duties seem less heavy, Camilla's behavior shows that she has stricter limits and is more direct and corrective than warm. This style, which was common in earlier generations of the monarchy and is still valued in some circles for keeping order, and the dignity of office is said by insiders to be more formal and less likely to include the small acts of personal recognition that have earned Catherine lasting goodwill. Whether the queen consort's behavior is due to her personality, the way she was raised, or a conscious choice to uphold particular ideas of royal power, the consequence, according to the testimonies, has been to establish a clear divide in how the staff sees the two women. For a long time, these variations in character seem to have been little more than a topic of discussion among servants in frivolous comparison that was brought up from time to time, sometimes for fun and other times for hushed complaints. But the stories say that when the tensions between the main characters grew, the staff's love for the princess turned into a protective instinct. They saw Catherine not just as a good boss, but also as a sign of what the monarchy might be more contemporary, caring and focused on the human side of public service. The accounts suggest that this feeling became stronger as stories started to spread, never entirely confirmed, but always there, that Camilla had acted in ways that made the princess very upset. At that moment, it is said that many staff members' commitment stopped being solely professional and became a question of personal loyalty and moral solidarity. According to these stories, the supposed reason for the staff's change from private worry to active, although quiet opposition was not one big incident, but a succession of encounters that became worse over time. People who were there say that a private meal supposed to be a small family gathering away from the public turned into what some subsequently saw as a planned act of humiliation. People who say they knew what happened that night provide different accounts, but they all agree that Camilla's comments were always sharp and meant to show that she was in charge of the princess, even if they weren't always blatantly abusive. They claim that what started as subtle insults and tension became into an open fight. Voices were raised in the dining room, and the princess, who was renowned for being calm, was observed to be upset and allegedly left the table in tears. The stories focus on the nature of the said comments. They weren't crude insults, but repeated undermining lines aimed to call into doubt Catherine's status in the monarchy. One very damaging comment that a number of sources repeat is claimed to have made her post seem temporary, emphasizing that her position came via marriage rather than being born into the royal line. The significance of such remarks cannot be overstated. The British monarchy has long been defined by fears about legitimacy, lineage, and belonging, and to imply that the princess's standing is uncertain and peripheral is to strike at the heart of her public and private identity. For a woman who has spent more than 10 years doing her job with evident dedication and who is seen by the public and staff as having an approachable type of dignity, such a comment, if it was really made, would have felt like a severe betrayal. The same sources say that the private dinner incident was followed by an even worse one at a public event with foreign officials and important attendees. They say that Queen Camilla used the public setting to scold or put down the princess in front of other people. Various versions of the story use various terminology to describe what happened, but the general idea is the same. It was a planned attempt to put her in her place in front of the whole world. Witnesses said that the princess froze, her calmness turned into astonishment, and the room's mood changed to tense stillness as everybody realized that something wrong had just happened. Catherine didn't get back at him right away. Instead, she lost her cool. For many staff members who witnessed the public wounds, it was too much to handle. Their protective sentiments went from silent worry to a more active kind of defense. As seen, the first practical reaction on the ground was for attendants to quietly go approach the princess and create a protective ring around her. This was done to protect her from public attention and to show their support. Staff tried to reassure her as best they could, telling her, "You are not alone." According to these reports, these simple actions have a big psychological impact on a place that values stoicism and keeping personal feelings to oneself. In a place where being quiet and keeping your distance from co-workers are seen as good things, the staff's choice to be so openly supportive is a big break from the usual internal restraint. After these occurrences, the palace's usual ways of manipulating reputation and optics are said to have started working. It was reported that photographers and communications personnel were told to be cautious with visual and recorded information, and that video had to be reviewed before it could be made public. The goal, according to this version, was to keep the official peaceful story of the night going. Still, the people who were there, the tone of voice, the look on the princess's face, and the effect on the staff couldn't simply forget what they saw. For the workers who thought that someone was trying to embarrass a co-worker and friend on purpose, the occurrences went from being simple violations of etiquette to what they perceived as moral hurts. As a result, the staff's attitudes slowly hardened into a propensity to withhold not needed service, but the friendliness and warmth that have always been a part of royal service. People who talk about the internal dynamics typically talk about how these changes affected Prince William on a personal level. The princess was quiet in public and didn't reply to the claimed insults, but sources suggest the prince was quite angry and determined to defend her in private. People who were there say he was angry not just because of what happened to his wife, but also because it might be perceived as an assault on the institution itself. An attack on the lady who was generally considered as the institution's future could be seen as an attack on the institution itself. His private talks with high-ranking aides are said to be full of strong dissent. People say he was sure that Camilla had gone too far and that her actions couldn't go unpunished. These stories make it seem like William's resentment finally culminated to a direct and passionate fight with the Queen Consort. Aides have described the meeting in great detail. It was a loud, powerful confrontation in Camilla's private quarters, during which the prince allegedly demanded answers and refused to accept reasons that were based on tradition. The testimonies say that the conversation got to the point where William brought up the traumatic recollection of how his mother was treated and told Camilla not to do the same things to Catherine that Princess Diana had done to her, such isolating her, belittling her, and making her feel like she didn't belong in the institution. The way he said it, with a mix of personal anger and a public interest reason, made it obvious that he saw his defense of Catherine as both a responsibility as a husband and a way to protect the monarchy's future stability. The palace sees the future monarch's direct challenge to the Queen Consort as a big deal in the internal balance of power. People who reported it saw it as a statement of priorities. Detractors and supporters alike would come to realize that William's allegiance to his wife would come first. The apparent support for the princess from the next person in line for the throne is said to have motivated servants who had already emotionally sided with Catherine. Before, support gestures were quiet, but now that the future king has made it clear that he is on the princess's side, more staff are apparently willing to speak out in favor of her dignity. The form this support took is central to the story of a silent rebellion. The accounts make it clear that the staff did not hold public protests, strikes, or other public denunciations. Instead, they used a variety of subtle, coordinated actions to withhold the discretionary parts of service that make up the social fabric of palace life. In a setting where perfect quick service is a moral and practical obligation to the crown, every sign of disrespect is obvious. The doorkeeper delaying for a split second when the Queen Consort entered a room, the attendant stepping away just as she reached for a glass, and the tray being misplaced or held back for a little longer than usual, were all planned moves to create distance. Some of these occasions could have seemed like mistakes made by people or problems that come up from time to time in a complicated process to someone who was watching from the outside. But within the household, they sent a clear and planned message. Staff would continue to do the important things that needed to be done for the institution to stay open. But the extra warmth, attention, and respect that is usually shown to senior royals would be given only to certain people. Bows would be less noticeable, and welcomes would be less formal. As a sign of displeasure, those modest, often overlooked acts of kindness that make hierarchical relationships more human would be taken away. The action was purposefully nonviolent and totally focused on protecting the institution's activities, while also showing moral condemnation of a specific person's behavior. While certain acts of respect were being withheld from the Queen Consort, reports say that other more positive expressions of support for the Princess of Wales were on the rise. There were reports of quiet notes of encouragement left in her private rooms that stated things like, "We stand with you," or "You are not alone." These were seen as signs of support from a group. People saw these messages, even if they were short, as strong signs of support and a way to keep spirits up in a place where official ways to complain or get help are limited, and keeping the public calm is the most important thing. The tension kept building until it got to the point when Camilla, according to these stories, realized how little her family was following her usual rules and being kind to her. According to people who were there, her reaction was quick and strong, a series of angry outbursts in which she told her senior aides to find and punish the people who were supposedly disloyal. The retelling of this part of the crisis includes claims that lists of suspected troublemakers were made and that threats of firing were used to try to regain control. The sources say that such steps didn't work. Instead of making the workforce submit again, the threats made them more determined. A lot of workers thought that the Queen Consort liked to control by using her authority and making people afraid instead of earning their esteem via kind leadership. The sources suggest that the peak of this dynamic was a meeting of top home personnel when Camilla's anger turned into a very violent outburst. One individual who was there said the event was unhinged, saying that it was an outburst in which she hit a table and accused the staff of plotting against her. The strong language used by people who spoke about the situation implies that it was, in their opinion, a very unusual break from the placid behavior that is anticipated at such events. In what is a big step forward, it is believed that a part of this fight was recorded, which goes beyond the typical rules of privacy and security that govern royal business. Some media outlets later got their hands on parts of the alleged audio, which led to headlines like Royal Meltdown and Camilla's Rage. The story, which started as an internal power struggle, became a public and political issue when those recordings were made public. The Queen Consort's effort to restore power via fear turned into something for the public to judge. The optics showed not restoring control, but a loss of leadership credibility and personal calmness. During these events, King Charles's silence was remarkable and has been noted by those mentioned in these reports. People who know him well say that he is torn between his loyalty to his wife and his obligation to keep the monarchy stable. Some others saw his unwillingness to take decisive action as a sign of poor leadership. These individuals indicate the king's lack of action caused the problem to get worse instead of being dealt with quickly and effectively by staff, the public, and even family members. As news of the incidents and the staff's failure to show their usual friendliness spread, the story swiftly became a worldwide one. News outlets all around the globe ran stories on the fighting in the palace, presenting it as a monarchy at war with itself. According to reports, diplomats and international observers who typically pay careful attention to the symbolic health of such organizations were worried about the stability of the royal household. In short, the situation had gone from being a private family problem to a one that may hurt the crown's image and status overseas. The last part of this sequence of supposedly linked events, as told by the sources, was the finding of a profoundly intimate handwritten message that was said to have been penned by the Princess of Wales. This message wasn't an official document. It was a private thought that was accidentally kept with other archive data. The note's content, as told in the accounts, talked about the princess's feelings of loneliness in the palace, and in direct but restrained language expressed her desire for basic conditions of mutual respect. I ask only for respect, for dignity, for peace within these walls. Staff members who read it said that the note's language and the emotional weight they gave it really hit home. Many who read it said it confirmed what they had suspected about the princess's private suffering. Many people have compared these stories to Princess Diana's personal stories of being alone and unhappy. This parallel is not made lightly. Diana's battles with loneliness, antagonism from institutions, and public scrutiny are all part of contemporary royal history. Finding a comparable letter that talks about isolation and dignity inevitably brought up that sad memories. For a lot of the staff, the concern to protect Catherine was mixed up with a feeling of moral duty to not let the same kinds of institutional errors that hurt Diana happen again. So in some stories, the staff's commitment to the princess was seen as both an apology and a sign of personal love. According to those stories, the fact that the memo got to top royals and even the prince himself was very important. William's strong desire to protect his wife's honor is said to have hardened into an unbreakable promise after reading the princess's secret appeal. The disagreement, which had mostly been between staff members up until this point, became a familial and dynastic issue. According to these individuals, what happened next was a public welcome that was supposed to show balance and grace, but instead turned into a clear reckoning. As the attendees subsequently told those who reported on the events, A remarkable scene transpired at the reception. When Queen Camilla asked for help, the report suggests there was a period of quiet when no staff member came to help. Attendants who would ordinarily have gone forward stayed put. The move, which was planned and very meaningful, made the Queen Consort feel alone in front of a group of important people from across the world. A few while later, the Prince and Princess of Wales came into the hall. The attitude changed noticeably. The same workers who had been rude to Camilla were alleged to have been very kind and welcoming to William and Catherine. People showed respect for the Prince and Princess of Wales by bowing, tilting their heads, and other little gestures. People thought these gestures meant that they were switching sides. People who talk about the evening say that Camilla looked sad and defeated, and that she had to face the fact that many people in her own household thought she had lost the respect and willingness to serve that she wanted because of her position and title. The stories end by saying that the events were a quiet win for the princess and a turning point in the gap between institutional authority and personal legitimacy. This report says that the rebellion, even though it was never officially announced or made a big deal of in public, had reached its goal. A large part of the royal household had chosen to support the monarchy's future, as they saw it in the Prince and Princess of Wales. It is important to note that the whole story is based on a group of insider reports and supposed events, many of which are disputed or portrayed as hearsay in the public conversation. The private dinner, the public engagement, the recorded outburst, the discovery of the handwritten note, and the reception in which help was not given are all examples of where specific details are given. They are said to have happened in ways and sequences that led to the overall effect described. However, these assertions remain unsubstantiated in the public record since no official palace revelation has substantiated the whole chronology and interpretation. The royal household has always presented itself as united and dignified, with a carefully planned picture of continuity meant to prevent the types of internal breaks that insiders talk about. Still, the stories have had real effects, even if they have been repeated and expanded upon in the news. They have prompted discourse regarding the interaction between individual temperament and institutional expectations within a constitutional monarchy. They have incited public debate concerning the exercise and preservation of royal authority, and they have elicited inquiries regarding the sufficiency of current mechanisms for addressing interpersonal conflicts in contexts that favor discretion and the repression of private grievances. The alleged events may have caused immediate embarrassment or damage to reputations, but their long-term significance lies in what they reveal about the sources of loyalty and legitimacy in an institution whose survival depends as much on symbolic consent as on statutory authority. People who gave the reports thought that the most important thing that made the difference was not procedure or title, but how they saw the person's character. The staff's readiness to withhold discretionary deference to protect the princess in private and to publicly express their respect for the future crown is portrayed as an indication of where they believe genuine moral authority lies. For these personnel, the monarchy's strength hinges on how effectively top leaders can show compassion, respect, and authority. The story portrays the supposed revolt not as an act of disobedience against the crown, but as an attempt to make the everyday work of the staff more in line with the moral standards of leadership that they think are necessary for the dynasty to survive in the long run. It is yet unclear from these stories if the events will have lasting consequences on the royal household or whether they will fade into a time of orchestrated reconciliation. It is evident that the purported series of humiliations, public revelations, and clandestine alliances resulted in a discernible reallocation of loyalties. They say that the symbolic effect is that the House of Windsor has shown by decision and in practice, if not in words, that the Prince and Princess of Wales are the most important people in the monarchy's future. If the claims are true, the effects will go beyond personal relationships and into the institutions themselves. Supporters' reputations, how diplomats see the situation overseas, and how the palace is run might all be impacted. If the charges are overstated or misinterpreted, they nonetheless show how weak a public institution can be when personal problems and public symbols come together. In either case, the episodes, as recounted by alleged witnesses, have underscored a vital aspect of modern monarchical governance, that authority is derived not only from legal or ceremonial standing, but also from the gradual, often imperceptible accumulation of respect and goodwill. When people think that such intangible assets are being wasted, Workers who have been taking care of the ceremonial machine for a long time may quietly but firmly decide to put their devotion where they think the crown's future dignity would be best protected. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe, and share it.